Okay. So what we're going to talk about with this video, we just looked at demand. Now we're going to look at the supply side. Usually you always hear demand and supply and demand, these kind of thrown together. When we were looking at demand, we were looking at it from you as a consumer's perspective. So like, what do you want to see with the price and things like that? And what's going to make you want more or less of a product and so forth. With supply, we're looking at it from the producer's perspective or the supplier. So their idea of what they would like to see with price and demand and things like that, it's a little bit different than what us as a consumer would want to see. So you have to begin to look at this as the person producing the products and what did they want to see with the price, how much are they going to supply, things like that, kind of what goes into their side of the business. We're seeing lots of problems with that currently due to COVID and kind of the backlog of or lack of supply that's going on due to shutdowns and things. It still hasn't quite caught back up. So we're seeing higher prices for goods and stuff like that. Um, so to have a supply, basically you have to be willing and to make a product and have the ability to sell it. So similar to demand, where you have to want the product and be able to afford it. To have supply, producers have to want to make it and have the ability to sell it. Okay, so that leads us to the law of supply, and this is pretty simple. Again, we're looking at it from the supplier's perspective. So as the price of an item increases, the suppliers are going to want to make sure there is more supply of their product to the market. Um, why is that? Well, at the higher price, they can make more money. Okay. When the price is lower, suppliers decide not to supply as much of that product because they're not making as much of a profit. So if you think about it, their whole goal is to make money each and every day. So they can't make a lot of money if they're selling their product at a low price. Okay. Um, so price is high, they want to supply more. When price is low, they want to supply less. They're going to kind of go off, what we like, what should we, and this is kind of where the demand factors into this. Um, but it all kind of works together, and that's kind of what they're looking at. Again, producer's perspective, they're looking at how can I maximize money. Again, they only have so many resources, so if there's a product that they can't get a very high price for and it's not making a lot of money, they're not going to put their limited resources into making that product. So this is what I was just talking about, the law of increasing marginal cost. So basically, to supply more, it costs more for them. They have to buy more raw materials, pay workers more. So if they can't get that higher price, they're not going to keep producing more. It's costing them more money, more resources to make two products instead of one product. So if that one product isn't selling at a high price, they have to limit, how much they make of it. Because again, scarcity, limited resources, they don't have an unlimited budget, just like me and you. So they have to determine which products are going to be profitable for them. Okay, so here's your supply schedule. Again, it follows along similar to the demand schedule, but again, we're looking at production. So at $2, if a taco company can get breakfast tacos at $2 a piece, they're going to be willing to supply four of those tacos. But if they can only get them at 50 cents, they're only going to want to supply maybe one. So again, they're looking at profit over price, whereas we as consumers, when we're looking at the demand side, we're looking at the opposite. Okay, we want to see that cheaper price, but producers, they want to make money. They want a higher price. So if they can get it, they're going to make more of that product. So here is your supply schedule. Okay, your supply curve. You can see that it's a diagonal line uh, going upward. Okay, remember the demand curve is a downward curve. Okay, it's this one is an upward curve, so it'll always look like this. Okay, so when you have demand and supply, it's going to kind of make an X. Okay, so it'll always look like this. Okay, it's going to follow the supply schedule. So at 50 cents, they're only going to supply one. Okay, at $2, they're going to supply way more, four. Okay, again, following the law of supply, higher price, higher supply. Okay, and again, same thing as the price changes, we move the point along this curve. Okay, we move it along this curve. So we'll talk about some things that cause this entire line to shift left and right. Just like with demand, we have supply determinants. But remember, if we're looking at just price and price only, it moves the point along the curve. Okay, so we could go, here all the way up to 4 if the price suddenly jumped to 2. Okay, it doesn't. That doesn't mean it's an overall increase or decrease in supply at all fronts. Okay, or at all prices. Okay, so this is what causes a change. So increase in supply, we're going to have more products at all the prices. So if I go back here and look, let's say this shifts over here. Okay, that could mean at 50 cents, now I'm going to supply 2. But at $1, I'm going to supply 3. Okay. At $1.50, I'll supply 4. And then at $2, I'll supply 5 if it were on there. Okay. But it always shifts to the right, and a decrease is always to the left. Again, it'll always be like this, just like with demand: increase to the right, decrease to the left. And here's what it would look like, how you would graph it. Notice just like with demand, you have your price, you have your quantity supplied, you have your supply curve, and this would be an increase in supply. So, real important here that you don't think up and down when you think increase and decrease, because a lot of people will be like, oh, supply went up, and they'll draw their line up here for their new supply curve. Okay. That is going to show a decrease in supply, but they assume, oh, up, and so they draw it above it, and that shows a decrease in supply. So always think increase, decrease. Okay, increase to the right, decrease to the left. Don't get in the mindset of thinking, oh, supply goes up or supply goes down. Okay, because that can lead you to drawing the curves on the wrong side. If you think, oh, supply goes down and you draw it underneath, you're really showing an increase in supply. So be careful with that. A lot of people, always tend to kind of flip those, and they know the answer, but they think up and down and they draw it the wrong way. Here's your decrease in supply, again shifting to the left. Okay, just like demand, increase right, decrease left. Okay, so these are the things, the determinants that can cause the supply to shift either left or right, and we're talking the entire curve, not just moving the point along the curve. We're talking about the entire curve. So first one, you have nice jag, easy way to remember it. Okay, natural or man-made phenomenon. Okay, so natural disasters, weather, war, riot, strikes, all these things that basically we can't account for that can disrupt supply lines. Look at the last year and a half, 2 years with COVID. Okay, that's a natural disaster. Okay, that's a disease. It's a virus. Um, it's something that people couldn't really plan for. It just happens. Okay, um, so with that happening, we saw a decrease in supply of lots of goods. We're still seeing the problems right now. We're seeing higher prices. We're seeing inflation. We're seeing some of that due to the lack of supply of products. One of the big ones is microchips going in cars and trucks. You see the prices of used cars right now are almost as high as a brand new car, which is just crazy. Um, but those new cars, so they can't get the microchips for them, so people are not able to get the new cars with like all the bells and whistles that they want because there's a limited supply of them. So they're flocking to, um, used cars because they can get a year old car that has all the stuff they want on it, and they're paying almost new car prices. So that lack of supply of those microchips is hurting the production, um, of brand new cars and making them more expensive. Okay, but then a side effect is it's also making used cars more expensive. Okay, so anything that can happen like that can increase or decrease the supply. Next one's input cost. This one's pretty simple. This is basically just all the things that go into making the product. So wages, changes in technology, productivity, the raw materials. So how much does it cost for you to get the materials needed to make your product? Okay. Um, Again, pretty simple. In order to make money, all these things go into making a product, and then you have to sell it. So if everything that goes into making your product becomes more expensive, that's limiting, or let's just say one of them that's limiting how much you can produce. Let's say you got to start paying your employees more. Okay, so you start paying them more. You either have to cut employees or you have to cut production because now you can't afford the raw material needed to make your product. Okay, or now you can't afford new technology that could increase your production. Okay, or something like that, or to fix your current technology. So input costs, anything that goes into making the product. Okay. Another one is competition. Okay. Competition amongst producers. So more producers, more supply, lower prices. Okay. Fewer producers, less supply. You're going to end up seeing higher prices. Okay. So competitive markets versus monopolistic markets. So think monopolies, limited, small amounts of companies. Um, and then you have, um, competitive markets where you have a lot more producers, and those producers are going to produce way more products, so you're just going to have more supply. All right, expectations of future prices. So this deals with price, but we're not dealing with current prices. We're dealing with future prices. Okay, so producers expect prices to rise in the future. They'll supply less now. So again, they're looking at, okay, do we think the prices might go up in the future? Well, if so, I'm not going to spend all my money just trying to pump up as much supply as possible right now. What they're going to do is they might produce it, but they're going to hold it in warehouses. They're going to wait. They're going to wait it out. They're just going to keep supplying their normal amount. But when that price goes up, that's when they're going to make sure there's plenty of product out there for people to buy. The worst thing for a supplier would be prices go up, people want these products, and you don't have enough to sell them. Okay, that's missed profit. That's missed out money. Okay. Again, the opposite. If they think prices are going to fall in the future, they're going to want to go ahead and get that supply right now, get it out there so people will buy it. Um, before the price drops. Okay, once that price drops, they're going to cut back because now they're not making as much money. So they're looking at prices just like we are, except they're just looking at it as kind of the opposite. Okay. All right. Next one is what we call joint supply. Okay, this is like it's the supply. This is profitability of goods that go together. So, like it says down there at the bottom, think of byproducts. Think of um, things that go together. So if we increase the supply of beef, then you can also say we increase the supply of leather. Okay. Um, those two things both come from cows. Okay. If we're just talking about genuine leather. Okay. Um, how can we, or if we supply more beef, then obviously there's going to be an increase in the supply of leather as well because we've just increased, cows. So there's more of each. So joint supply is anything that goes together, um, products that can be used together, or one main product that can be used for several different items. If we increase that main product, then we increase all those other items, those byproducts that come from the cow, essentially. Alternative goods. This one kind of depends on the producer's perspective. Okay, like it says down here, remember resources are scarce, so decisions have to be made, and then that are gonna make them the most money. But in doing so, that means they have to sacrifice things. So this is where that opportunity cost comes in. So, a farmer, for example, can make more money growing pineapples instead of bananas. He's going to increase the supply of pineapples and decrease the supply of bananas. He can't put 100% into pineapples and 100% into bananas. So imagine you had a pie and you're like, here's all my resources. I got to divvy up where these resources go. Well, if I can make more money with the pineapples, I'm going to put more of my resources into pineapples and less into bananas. So I'm going to produce more pineapples and I'm going to produce less bananas. Because they can't just, like I said, their resources are scarce. They have to sacrifice things. Opportunity cost, most desirable alternative given up. Okay. They have to get rid of things. Okay. They can't supply 100% into everything. So that's where the alternative goods come in. One's more profitable than the other. Well, as a business person, you're going to, make the one that is way more profitable for you. Their job is to make money. They're not in this like as a charity to just provide us with stuff. They're trying to make money. All right. And the last one is government actions. Okay. Business taxes, regulations, subsidies. Anytime the government gets involved, they start slapping taxes on businesses. Usually that decreases production. Regulations, that'll decrease production. Now, if you start saying, oh, now they're going to start lifting taxes or they're going to start deregulating things, then you're going to see, what you would think would be an increase in the supply. Subsidies, same thing, getting money from the government if to pay to make a certain product. We see this in agriculture a lot. Government will pay the difference to produce corn instead of um, um, instead of green beans or something. I don't know. Okay. Um, that's pushing you to increase your supply of a certain product because you're getting money from the government. Okay, so anytime the government wants to step in, they're either going to try and increase supply, decrease supply. Just kind of depends on what they do. But anything that's going to cost the producer more money, that's going to tend to decrease the supply of that product again because of scarcity. Okay, because of that idea of scarcity. Okay,